You're not my daughter anymore, Dad's words echoed through the empty hallway of our once shared home. I stood there, duffel bag slung over my shoulder, fighting back tears as I watched him rip up the college acceptance letter I'd been so proud of just hours ago. Dad, please, I whispered. MIT is my dream. Your dream. He laughed bitterly. Your brother needs the college fund more than you do. James is going to take over the company someday. He needs a proper business degree, not some. He waved his hand dismissively. Computer science nonsense. Behind him, Mom stood silently, wringing her hands but saying nothing. She never did when it came to defending me against Dad's decisions. James, my younger brother by 2 years, leaned against the doorframe, a smirk playing on his lips. The money's already been transferred to James's account, Dad continued coldly. If you want to waste your time with computers, you can figure out how to pay for it yourself. I straightened my spine, years of disappointment hardening into determination. Fine, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'll do it myself. All of it. Don't come crawling back when you fail, James called out as I walked toward the door. I paused, hand on the doorknob. I won't. That was 10 years ago. 10 years of struggle, determination, and ultimately success. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through MIT, coding late into the night while my classmates partied. My small web development business started in my dorm room, grew into something bigger than anyone could have predicted. Now, sitting in my office on the 40th floor of downtown's most prestigious building, I stared at the document in front of me. Bennett Technologies, my parents' company, was failing. James, their golden child, had run it into the ground with risky investments and poor management. Their stock was plummeting and they needed a buyout to survive. Miss Carter. My assistant Sarah's voice came through the intercom. The Bennett Technologies board is here for the meeting. I smiled, smoothing down my tailored suit. They had no idea who was behind the takeover bid. The investment group's name gave nothing away, and I'd conducted all preliminary negotiations through intermediaries. Send them in, I said, standing up and walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows. 10 years ago they'd thrown me out with nothing. Now I was about to become their boss. The door opened and I heard multiple footsteps enter the room. Then a sharp intake of breath. Emma. My father's voice, usually so confident, came out as barely more than a whisper. I turned around slowly, savoring the moment as recognition dawned on their faces. James looked like he'd seen a ghost. Mom's hand flew to her mouth and Dad stood frozen, his face draining of all color. Hello, Dad, I said calmly, gesturing to the conference table. Shall we begin? The silence in the conference room was deafening. Dad's hands gripped the back of his chair so tightly his knuckles turned white. James was the first to recover, his shock quickly morphing into his familiar sneer. What kind of joke is this? He demanded, looking around as if expecting the real buyer to appear. I sat down at the head of the table, opening a leather portfolio. No joke, James. Please, everyone, take a seat. We have a lot to discuss. Mom sank into a chair, still staring at me like she was seeing a ghost. The other board members, mostly Dad's old golf buddies who'd watched me grow up, shifted uncomfortably in their expensive suits. This is ridiculous, Dad finally found his voice. We're here to meet with Carter Global Investments. I smiled, sliding a business card across the table. You are Emma Carter, CEO and founder of Carter Global Investments. Though you might remember me better as Emma Bennett. You. James laughed, but there was an edge of panic in his voice. There's no way you could afford to buy Bennett Technologies. This is some kind of sick revenge fantasy. I pulled out a tablet and projected the company's financial records onto the wall screen. Let's talk numbers, shall we? In the past 3 years under your leadership, James, Bennett Technologies has lost 60% of its market value. Your debt has tripled. 4 major clients have terminated their contracts. I swiped through the slides, each one highlighting another failure. You've had 3 CFOs resign in 18 months. And now. I paused, letting the gravity sink in. You're 3 weeks away from defaulting on your loans. The color drained from James's face. These weren't just numbers. This was his failure laid bare for everyone to see. How did you get this information? Dad demanded. I've been watching Bennett Technologies for years, I replied calmly. Watching you promote James despite his lack of qualifications. Watching him drive Mom and Dad's legacy into the ground. Watching and waiting. I stood up, walking around the table slowly. While you were busy running this company into bankruptcy, I was building something bigger. Carter Global Investments now owns controlling interests in 3 major tech companies, 2 banks, and a venture capital firm with assets worth over $2 billion. That's impossible, James whispered. Remember when you said computers were a waste of time? I stopped behind his chair. Funny how things work out. One of the board members, Mr. Harrison, cleared his throat. Miss Carter. Emma, what exactly are you proposing? I returned to my seat, pulling out the final document. A complete buyout. Carter Global Investments will acquire Bennett Technologies for $40 per share, which, given your current situation, is more than generous. $40? Another board member leaned forward. That's a 30% premium over current market value. Dad slammed his hand on the table. This is our company. Our family's legacy. I corrected quietly. Until you gave it to James to destroy. Mom spoke for the first time, her voice trembling. Emma, please. This company, it's all we have left. All you have left? I felt years of hurt bubble up. You had a daughter who wanted nothing more than to make you proud. Who dreamed of using technology to modernize this company and take it into the future. Instead, you threw her out at 18 because her dreams didn't fit your plans. I opened another file on the screen showing 2 paths for the company. You have 2 choices. Accept the buyout or watch Bennett Technologies collapse within the next 3 months when your loans come due. And believe me, I met each board member's eyes. No other company will offer you terms this generous. The room erupted in whispered conversations. Board members huddled together, looking at their phones, presumably checking the numbers I'd presented. James sat slumped in his chair, all his arrogance finally deflated. Dad stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. We need time to discuss this. You have 24 hours, I said, gathering my papers. Though I should warn you, my offer drops by $5 per share every day you delay. As they filed out of the conference room, looking shell-shocked and defeated, Dad lingered behind. He looked older than I remembered, the weight of his failures evident in the slump of his shoulders. Emma, he started, then stopped, seeming to struggle with his words. Yes, Dad. How did you do all this? I walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. Remember Tommy Chin? The quiet kid from my high school programming club. I turned back to face him. The one you said I was wasting time with instead of focusing on real business? Dad nodded slowly. He and I founded our first tech company together in college. Sold it for $50 million 2 years after graduation. That was just the beginning. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Turns out those computer science classes weren't such a waste of time after all. He took a step toward me, reaching out slightly. Emma, The meeting's over, Dad. I cut him off. 24 hours. Make your decision. As the door closed behind him, I sank into my chair, letting out a long breath. Sarah appeared with a glass of water and a concerned look. Are you okay? She asked softly. I looked at the family photo still displayed on the screen, taken 10 years ago, just weeks before they'd thrown me out. We looked happy, normal. If only I'd known then what I know now. I'm fine, I said, turning off the display. Schedule a meeting with legal for tomorrow morning. Something tells me we'll be drafting acquisition papers. Sarah nodded and headed for the door, then paused. Emma, for what it's worth, you showed them more mercy than they showed you. I stared at my reflection in the darkened screen, seeing not the scared 18-year-old girl they'd thrown out, but the powerful woman I'd become. It's not about mercy, Sarah, I said quietly. It's about proving them wrong. All of them. The next 24 hours moved like a carefully choreographed dance. I had anticipated every move, planned for every scenario. By morning, my phone was flooded with messages from board members, each one trying to negotiate privately, hoping to secure their position in the inevitable transition. I sat in my home office, a penthouse overlooking the city, scrolling through emails when an unexpected name appeared. Mom. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. Emma, please meet me for coffee. Just us. No Dad, no James. There's something you need to know. I almost declined, but something in the wording caught my attention. After a moment's hesitation, I replied with the address of a small cafe. Not the fancy establishments where she usually took her ladies' lunches, but the humble coffee shop where I'd worked during my first year of college. When I arrived, Mom was already there, looking out of place in her designer outfit among the students with their laptops. She'd aged but gracefully, her hair now streaked with elegant silver instead of the carefully maintained blonde I remembered. "You look beautiful," she said softly as I sat down. "Successful. What do you want, Mom?" I kept my voice neutral, professional. She wrapped her manicured hands around her untouched coffee cup. "There's something you should know about the company, about why your father was so insistent on James taking over." I leaned back, waiting. Mom had always been the quiet one, the proper corporate wife who never questioned Dad's decisions publicly. This was new territory. "The company, it's not what you think," she continued, her voice dropping. "Your father, he's been hiding things. Major things. The real reason he didn't want you involved wasn't just about tradition or James being the son." "What are you saying?" She glanced around nervously before pulling out a USB drive. "This contains files I've been collecting for years. Financial records, hidden accounts, unofficial agreements. Your father." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "He's been running 2 sets of books for over a decade." I took the drive, turning it over in my hands. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because you're smarter than James. You always were. You'll know what to do with it." She reached across the table, touching my hand briefly. "And because I should have done this 10 years ago when he threw you out." Before I could respond, she stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Whatever you decide to do with that information, I'll understand. Just remember that some of us did believe in you, Emma. We were just too cowardly to say it." She left me sitting there, staring at the USB drive that could change everything. Back at my office, I spent hours going through the files. Mom was right, the corruption ran deep. False invoices, phantom employees, offshore accounts. Dad hadn't just been running the company poorly, he'd been systematically draining it for years. "Miss Carter." Sarah's voice interrupted my investigation. "The Bennett Technologies board is requesting an emergency meeting. They've made a decision about the buyout." I smiled grimly, pocketing the USB drive. Perfect timing. Set it up for 3 p.m. The boardroom looked different this time. Gone was the shock and outrage from yesterday, replaced by a grim acceptance. Dad sat at the far end of the table, as far from the head seat as possible. James wasn't present. "Where's my brother?" I asked, noting his absence. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "James resigned this morning. Effective immediately." "I see." I opened my laptop, connecting it to the display. "Before we discuss your decision, I'd like to share some new information that's come to light." Dad's head snapped up, his eyes widening as the first document appeared on screen, a detailed breakdown of his hidden financial network. "As you can see," I continued calmly, "Bennett Technologies has been operating under some interesting accounting practices." The room erupted in chaos. Board members jumped to their feet, shouting questions and accusations. Dad remained seated, his face ashen as decades of deception unraveled before his eyes. "That's enough." His voice cut through the noise. "This meeting is over." "Actually, Dad," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room, "it's just beginning. You see, my offer from yesterday? It's no longer on the table." The board members fell silent, watching the confrontation between father and daughter. "Given these revelations, I'm adjusting my offer to $20 per share," I announced. "Still generous, considering the legal implications of what I've just shown you." "You wouldn't," Dad whispered. "Your own father." "You made your choice 10 years ago," I replied evenly. "Now I'm making mine." One by one, the board members turned to Dad, their expressions ranging from disgust to betrayal. Mr. Harrison stood up, straightening his tie. "I move to accept Ms. Carter's revised offer," he said firmly. "All in favor?" Hands rose around the table. Dad watched helplessly as his empire crumbled, brought down not by his son's incompetence, but by his own decades of deceit. "Very well," I said, sliding a stack of contracts across the table. "Let's make this official." As the board members signed the documents, Dad finally stood up, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why dig all this up? You could have just taken the company cleanly." I walked over to him, keeping my voice low enough that only he could hear. "Because you didn't just rob me of my family, Dad. You robbed every employee of this company of their security. every investor of their trust. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. 6 months had passed since the acquisition. Bennett Technologies, now rebranded as Carter Innovation Systems, had undergone a complete transformation. The old guard was gone, replaced by a team of young, ambitious professionals who shared my vision for the future. I stood in my father's old office, my office now, looking at the changes. The stuffy oak furniture and hunting trophies had been replaced with modern decor and state-of-the-art technology. The only thing I'd kept was his old desk, a reminder of how far I'd come. Miss Carter. Sarah appeared in the doorway. The quarterly numbers are in. I took the tablet she offered, scanning the figures. Our stock had doubled since the takeover. The company's new tech division, focusing on sustainable energy solutions, was already turning heads in Silicon Valley. Also, Sarah hesitated, your brother is here. I looked up sharply. James hadn't been seen since his resignation 6 months ago. Send him in. He looked different, humbled. Gone were the expensive suits and arrogant swagger. He wore jeans and a simple button-down shirt, and there was something almost apologetic in his stance. Hello, Emma, he said quietly. James. I gestured to a chair. What brings you here? He sat down, fidgeting with his wedding ring. I've been doing a lot of thinking. About everything. About how we treated you. I waited, keeping my expression neutral. I'm not here to ask for my job back, he continued. I know I don't deserve that. But. He pulled out a folder. I've been developing this app. It's a platform for connecting small businesses with local investors. Nothing fancy, but. I took the folder, examining his proposal. The idea was solid, surprisingly well thought out. You did this yourself? He nodded. After everything fell apart, I went back to school. Took some coding classes. Turns out you were right, technology is the future.